Hi everybody, welcome to the Purpose People podcast. We've got the other half of the duo, so Batman and Robin, I don't know which one is which. We've got Gareth from the SolveCo, so thanks so much for joining us on
Thank you,
our
Darren.
nice little chairs.
Thank you for inviting me.
Now, we were talking about failure and failure in business, and
Yeah.
one of the reasons why we wanted you on here, Gareth, because you are quite technical. You understand the nuances and the things like that, the questions that people don't ask. So essentially, I'm going to try and ask the difficult questions, and then you're going to try and answer them for us.
See how I do.
Let's see how you do. The good thing is, it's going to be education for me. It's going to be education for people out there, and what happens. So I guess the first thing is, before we go there, is how did you end up in a career like this?
Well, it wasn't something I planned.
Yeah.
I mean, to be honest, I never really knew what I wanted to do after college. I never went the usual route, which is university and kind of like going on to develop a career that way. I wanted to start earning money straight away. My elder sister had gone to university, and she did a course that didn't actually affect the career that she entered. So there was no real benefit except a lot of debt. So I wanted to just go out there straight into work and start to earn some money.
Yeah.
My first job was an office job. It was supposed to be like an accounting assistant. But day one, they gave me a pair of rigger boots, and I was out on site with the construction lads helping when it was short. So it was a very, very different kind of role. But I always liked learning. So this is probably showing my age now, when the very first online Open University course came out,
Wow.
it was only a short module on creative learning and thinking. And so I applied for that. I started working through it. And because the internet was still in its early days, should we say, this was 2002, 2003. One of the tasks was to look at online job applications. And I went on there and I saw a job, and I didn't actually know what it was. It sounded interesting. You'd be dealing with all of these different businesses and individuals and creditors and debtors and all sorts of other aspects. And it turns out it was an insolvency role.
Right.
Went for the interview and got the job. So really, it wasn't something I was looking for. It's just something I fell into. And then when I got in there, I found that it made a lot of sense to me. I could understand the situations and the challenges, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed helping people and speaking to people. So yeah, that's how it started.
So when you're talking about, you're seeing these different businesses, and the overriding feeling is like people haven't got it all together, but I guess the thing that what Steph had said is that at least you tried, right? At least you're going for it. At least you're trying to do something outside of the norm. And I think there is that perception that, anyone can start a business, and, if it fails, it's like, well, it's your fault type thing. And there's not much empathy for business owners, I feel, out there at the moment, and I think it's understanding that these people take huge amounts of risk.
Yeah, I mean, when I said obviously that, I assumed, and that was my kind of impression, that business owners had all the answers, it made me realise, well, yes, anybody can have a go at it, but not everyone does. Not everyone's brave enough to take that risk, and you're risking, it's not just money, you're risking money, of course, because you're investing, you're risking time, but it's also you're putting your reputation, your faith, your ambitions on the line, and you're putting them to the test. Some people don't want to test themselves because they're afraid of that failure. I think it's a brave step to run your own business, and there are so many pressures on business owners that those that are willing to take it on and keep going and do it again after something goes wrong and start a new business, there's a lot of respect there.
And I think that's the overriding thing, having spoken to Steph and now speaking to you, the overriding thing is that I would say the majority of business owners, they want to make an impact for the world, and they want to do good stuff. And sometimes things just don't always play to their favour.
There is a lot more focus now on ethical business and doing business the right way, having less impact on the environment. Just also the way we treat people in society, the much more thoughtful approach, more customer focused, actually trying to serve a purpose rather than just making money. It used to be that was the overriding priority.
Yeah.
And it still is. People still want to make money, but they want to do it the right way.
Yeah, of course.
And that's such a nice shift to see over the last decade or so.
But then saying that, and this is what we're finding, is that it's not always easy when you're making a business for impact. You might say goodbye to the big money clients and go for slightly less in terms of the size. So therefore, then it comes with its own pressures. Like if you are going to go after impact, yes, it will bring income, but sometimes it's a bit of a longer game.
Yeah. And also it can cost more as well, because you're having to make ethical choices in terms of suppliers and things like that. So you might end up spending a premium to get the same or similar product. But that's the choice that we make, and there are benefits to that. Hopefully in the future you'll get customers willing to pay a premium for that kind of service. So you hope that as a society we're willing to invest in the companies that do the right thing.
So from your perspective then, we're obviously dealing with businesses that are going through tough times, and one of the things Steph said is just have a telephone call. So just talk us through that process. Let's say you're a director, you're feeling the heat, you can see debts mounting up, you might have lost a couple of clients that were paying you a decent amount of money, or they've gone down. When is a good time to call someone like yourself?
My advice would always be sooner than you think. So if you think now is the time to call somebody, you probably should have made that call earlier. Okay. If you've got any concerns about your business, get some expert advice, whether it's your accountant, whether it's a solicitor, or if you think actually insolvency, speak to an insolvency practitioner, because there are more opportunities to rescue a business the earlier you deal with it. So often I see businesses that come to me and they've taken steps, say 2-3 months earlier, that have given them nowhere to move, no options. They've taken options away, and it means that closure is the only option. Whereas if they'd have taken earlier action, taken advice, they could potentially turn it around. In terms of the phone call, it's really simple. It's a short call. You can't get a full understanding of a business in a half-hour call, but what you can do is get an idea, like an overhead view, to understand the main things, kind of, what kind of industry they're in, what is the problem? Is it, sales are dropping? Is it costs have gone up? Getting a breakdown of, what the assets and the debts are. And then we have an idea of what the situation is. We can run through a few options, and then we can follow that up at a later date if we need to. I think every individual and every business is different, but there are a lot of commonalities there. It's usually there's someone knocking on the door demanding payments. How do we deal with that particular issue right now? So it's just that reassurance to give them that comfort in terms of what steps they take immediately.
So from your perspective then, when a business owner gets to that point where they feel there's no way out, what would your advice be to that person? Because for me, that's probably the biggest thing, that they don't talk to anyone. So what would that look like?
So first of all, there are always options. There might be the options that are on the table might not be the ones that you want, but there are always options. There are always things that you can do. And quite often when they know what the consequences of those options are, so say closing the business, like last option of last resort, you close the business, it doesn't actually mean that that's the end of your business career. It's very easy to set up a new company, to take all of those learnings and go ahead and be successful. It's just understanding the path that they have to take and the steps that they have to do to make sure that they don't fall foul of the law and they do everything the correct way.
So, because I think that's the general position. If I've got a failed business, I can't go into business ever again. What would you say to that?
Most people I speak to have 3, 4, 5 businesses. Some have failed, some haven't. That's what a limited liability company is there for. It's so that you can take a risk, and it doesn't mean the end of your financial situation. It's just the end of that company. And a limited company it's its own, in the eyes of the law, it's like a living entity. So when that one fails and that's gone, you can set up another one and go again. It's obviously doing it the right way and making sure that we're not deliberately failing businesses. But like I say, the vast majority of the people I speak to are genuine, and that's not the case.
So let's say you've not opened to this knowledge and you haven't spoken to anybody before, and then let's say you're taking finance from outside to support and sustain it, let's say. What would your, and as a result of that finance, because, some of that finance is not necessarily easy finance, so you have to put a personal guarantee and stuff like that. how would you deal with that? For example, you got a struggling business. You make the decision maybe to close it down, but then you're left with this personal guarantee stuff. What would you say to that?
Yeah, I mean, personal guarantees are there because it's so easy to close a business.
Right.
So a lender could, lend you £100,000, and the next day you could close your business. If there's no personal guarantee, it's very difficult to get that money back.
Yeah.
So that's why they do it.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, when they take out money, they take out finance, they don't realise there's a personal guarantee attached, so they're not aware of it. It's only worth doing if you think that the business is successful or it's got a chance of success.
Yeah.
I think the people that take personal guarantees when the business is on a downturn or it's struggling, they really have to be very careful. And they should be speaking to their accountant, doing cash flows, making sure that the business is sustainable.
Yeah.
Because if it's going to continue losing money, eventually you'll burn out of that cash and be in the same place as you were before, except this time you've got a larger debt.
Thing to deal with.
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing you can do in terms of a personal guarantee when a company goes into liquidation. That's it. They're then going to contact you personally.
Yeah.
But what you can do is negotiate with them. You can have a conversation with the bank, usually a bank or a lender. Have a conversation, and in some cases you can make some kind of settlement offer or some kind of monthly payment offer.
Yeah.
We do actually help the directors as well, so we'll deal with the business side of things, and then it's a separate advice piece to kind of go through the personal.
Yeah, of course.
And quite often it's not just a personal guarantee. It might be that they've funded the business with credit cards and they've not taken a wage for God knows how long, so other debts have built up. So they will need that personal support as well.
Yeah, of course.
And that's important to get that.
Yeah, yeah. So, for instance, let's say when you're in a business, what would you say would they be the signs to look out for? Because I mean, obviously, they're signs, aren't there, where you kind of like, we all know that there's ups and downs, 100%. But what are the main signs that you would say where you might need to have a conversation with yourself?
I think that the main one is that you're struggling to pay what you've got to pay. So HMRC is always a good example here because people use the VAT because you don't have to pay it till the next quarter, so it's a bit of cash flow. But if you're constantly struggling to scrape that money together to pay that bill, if you're struggling to pay the payroll, if you're having people contacting you to say you've paid late again, it's an indication that the cash flow isn't quite there and you need to take a look at it. Mm-hmm. I'd say that's the main one. I mean, there are lots of others. If you look at sales turnover, if that's gradually decreasing over time, and sometimes it's industries, it's companies like Blockbuster type services. Eventually they will patter away because there are new technologies out there. It's mainly about creditors and reduced sales. There are obviously you've got income shocks. You could have a big client that doesn't pay you, and it leaves you in a pickle. So before that, you're a perfectly sensible business, managing everything. One big client doesn't pay, and it causes a problem that it's very difficult to get out of.
Yeah, of course. So in terms of for somebody out there that is, maybe the options are, what are the options? I think that's probably the best thing to say. What are the options would be for someone, the business going through a difficult time? Let's just chuck an idea out there, just take an average case that you deal with where it's not so far gone, so they have enough options. What would the options be?
Yeah, every business is different, and there are depending on who your creditors are, the people you owe money to, how supportive they are. Have you got a lease premises that you really need for the business? Yeah. So there are all these different factors there, but in general terms, the main options are obviously liquidation, which is closing the business. Yeah. Restructuring, which some people say restructuring, but it could just be that you do a personal restructuring. So you look at the business and just try to reduce overheads, try a slightly different market to increase sales. We also have the formal restructuring, which is administration. I think we hear about this a lot, don't we, in football and things like that. So pre-packs, they're always talking about pre-packs. Yeah. And people talk very badly about these kind of solutions because it's seen that the company's dropping the debt and getting to carry on scot-free. But that's not quite the case. The people that are owed money do lose out, but usually there's a reason, and it's the benefit of doing it this way means that the business stays in trade. Yeah. The employees keep their jobs and taxes continue to be paid going forward. So there's got to be a benefit in a pre-pack. And again, if you're a lender, it doesn't look great because you've now received zero from this business that you lent a lot of money to. But it's an option that's there. It's in the insolvency law, and businesses should use it if it suits them.
So one of the questions that I get asked is let's say they do close a business down.
Mm-hmm.
What are the options then? Because that thing is like, because we touched a little bit on when people feel that they're so closed in, they just want to exit life. They think thoughts of suicide, that sort of stuff. But if the worst did happen, what are the options generally after that?
If we talk about an owner-managed business, because these are the type of businesses we see on a regular basis. So
of course.
If you need to close a business because of debt, then it is liquidation. It's a creditor's voluntary liquidation, because you're voluntarily, as a director, choosing to put the company into liquidation.
Yeah.
So that's the formal route to do that, and that's the legal and proper way. The problem is that it costs money to do that. You've got to pay an insolvency practitioner who acts as liquidator, and there's a fee to do it. Now, a lot of these businesses, they've got nothing in the pot at all. It's they were struggling because of COVID. They took out a bounce back loan that allowed them to keep going a little bit longer. But now they've run out of cash. All the assets are gone, so they're in a bit of a limbo, and they can't strike off the business. So a business without debt, you can simply strike it off by filling out a form at company's house.
Right.
But you can't do that if you've got debt.
Yeah, of course.
So you're left in a kind of an in-between zone.
Mm-hmm.
And all we've said to those people is, look, liquidation is the right way to go. But if you can't afford to do that, you're not legally required to put your hand in your own pocket and pay for the services of liquidation, because that's a director lending more money to the company.
Yeah, of course.
You're not legally required to do that. So do nothing. And it sounds strange to say that, but that's all you can do. So don't ask your accountant to file any more accounts. Don't file any more confirmation statements at company's house. And eventually, it'll take a long time, but eventually company's house will remove it from the register. And that's effectively the company no longer existing. Yeah.
So what happens in that instant, though, with all the debts?
They're all gone. They're written off. Unless anything that's personally guaranteed by the director, they will then contact the director to get their money back. But anything that's just in relation to the company, so if it was VAT, PAYE, or any like non-guaranteed loans, bounce back loans, they are just written off.
Right. Okay. So how do you deal? Because obviously you deal with people going through this every day. But have you ever been able to give advice to people that feel ashamed of this situation?
Yeah, I mean, all the time. I think a lot of people delay the advice because of that feeling. Yeah. And the types of business I see, you can often see the reason behind it, the reason for failure. And in most cases, it's totally beyond their control. And even if it is, it's like, this is, we're all learning out. We're all trying to run businesses, and we're learning as we go. You're going to make mistakes. And sometimes those mistakes have a bigger consequence. But if people are ashamed, if they're not embracing those learnings, then they're not going to be able to move forward. Yeah. So that I really enjoy speaking to people in that situation, because I want to reassure them that there are so many other people that have made the same mistake, that are in the same situation, and that have got out the other end and been successful. So it's an opportunity.
I think I was saying to Steph, it's very much like the Instagram thing. It's like you've got this little window and slice of life that everyone sees from the outside, and then you've got the aspects of, we're going through a tough time even. What I've found, certainly some of the networks that I've been in, is that's been more of a conversation. We're going through a tough time, like like a company's gone down on you, or they're not willing to pay. It's become more common now, and so people are willing to talk about that. So I think there has been a slight shift, like everyone pretending it's okay, because it's actually tough, for businesses and people. But it's that, I think it's that sense of shame, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? What are people going to think of me? How are we going to turn that ship round or whatever? And it's not always easy, right? Yeah. And I think that the great thing about you and Steph is you also own a business as well that's going through the similar challenges that we've all been through. And so for me, it's like being able to talk to people is massive. The conversations have changed over the last few years. I think COVID helped a lot with that, because everyone was kind of in the situation together. Everyone was struggling. Every business, or most businesses, had to cease trading for a period, and it impacted everybody. And it gave people the opportunity to have those conversations in the open. Yeah. So some of that has kind of shifted a little bit, but it's not enough. I think people need to be more open, more willing to talk about failure, and in the right way. I think Steph mentioned that in America, it's kind of a badge of honor. If you fail a business in America, then that's step one on the list of being an entrepreneur, and that's how we should see it. As failing in the right way
is learning from your mistakes, and that's not really a failure.
I think if it's like in the US, and I'm not trying to generalize at all for American people, but there is this thing of like, we'll find a way. There's that pioneering spirit. Maybe it's the Declaration of Independence, but it's like, if it doesn't work out, we'll go, or we were short with the knowledge that we had, and almost that. Whereas in this country, I think it's very much like we are very much keep our mouths closed, shut. We just don't want to talk about that sort of stuff.
The stiff upper lip.
Stiff upper lip. It's like, how you doing? Okay, when you're not. So there's those sorts of things, and I think there's a lot to be said that we can learn, not that we're irresponsible, but learn that actually that we need to find a way. Let's find a way.
Yeah.
And I think that's great with yourselves, where people can talk to you and go, well, let's find a way, and obviously we're very, purpose driven, and we're all about discovering purpose. And it seems like you're almost like doctors in purpose, like how to keep someone on purpose when they've got an illness, let's say debt, or when they've got something that's, affecting them physically, emotionally, spiritually, whatever it may be, that they can start to talk to you to say, well, let's show you the facts. Let's show you what all your options look like, and almost help them on that journey.
Yeah, and just asking that question, what do they actually want to do going forward? Because quite often it's slightly different to what they're doing now anyway, and they would like to pivot into a new field or do things slightly different, and it gives them an opportunity to kind of get back on purpose.
So one of the things I wanted to talk about is that sometimes the end isn't the end. And so what successes have you had? Now, I know you can't name the names of the companies. I appreciate that. But what successes have you had where the options have been, look, for them, there's only one way out of this, and then you've had a conversation with them and changed things? Or?
I think we've had some huge successes. I mean, we deal with mainly owner-managed businesses, so it's at the smaller end of the scale. But I think that's where it has more of an impact.
Yeah.
Because, these people, they've got, say, 6, 7, 10 employees. They're almost like family. The business owner a lot of the stress is about dealing with them and how they're going to help their employees. And we're often able to help them restructure the debt or set up a new business which is on much more solid foundations, so that they can go on and be successful.
Okay.
I'm trying to think of a particular example, but tricky without actually dropping them in it.
Don't drop it out. So I'll give you an example, because I know a couple. So I remember talking to a company that was struggling, and I said, have you heard about R&D? And they looked at me like I was mad.
Yeah.
And the particular field that we're in would lend itself to them being able to claim R&D. And so as a result of that, I introduced them to somebody that then they claimed R&D, and part of their business, it was transformative, because they got a slice of cash come in that they didn't realize they were eligible for, in light of all the other stuff that was going on with COVID and all this sort of stuff. So it gave them a boost. Now, I think there was a window of time where they could do 3 or 4. I mean, you can go back 2 years.
Yeah.
So you can claim R&D back to 2 years. And I think the nature of what they do allowed them to claim it for about 4 years. And then that was, they'd done what they needed to do in that particular field. But they weren't aware of it, and it was, to some respects, when I look at the amounts of money involved, that was the difference between them, if you like, keeping going. I wouldn't say it was as completely harsh as that, but it definitely helped when they got that influx of cash come in. It took the pressure off, and I think R&D, for example, which is a government incentive scheme to inspire innovation, that people are just not aware of.
Yeah, and it can make such a big difference. I think that's what we come across a lot in terms of businesses that are struggling. They're not aware of their options. They're not aware that they can close the business down, restructure. They've got a really viable business. It's just that they're weighed down by debt. Yeah. And as soon as you take that debt away, they can be off and successful again, because the business model is great. It's just COVID, Brexit, cost of living, whatever has occurred has caused them a problem. And it's just making people aware of how that works and how easy it can be.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I think for me, it's understanding that, when you're talking to someone with all those years worth of experience, you can bring other things to the table that they wouldn't, because it's not knowledge you look at, is it? It's not like you don't start a business and go, well, what happens if I fail from the get-go? But if you're talking to someone when you're going through a bit of a tough time and they go, well, look, actually, I've got some of these examples here. I can't name names, but how I can actually help, all of a sudden just gives people the hope in what seems to be a hopeless situation.
Yeah. And there are things that people can do when they're setting up a business, and you're not planning for failure, but it's a bit like insurance. You don't plan for the building to catch fire, fall down, whatever, but you still take out insurance anyway, don't you?
Yeah.
So it's like when you're setting up a business, you should plan for those kind of consequences. So things like making sure that you, as a director, you've got an employment contract. Yeah. Because if the business does go into liquidation, and if you're classed as an employee, you'll get paid redundancy, which might be the difference between you being able to set up a new business or not.
Yeah.
Because it might give you the capital to go again. Just making sure your contracts are all, correctly enforced so that you're not exposed if the business fails.
Yeah.
Being aware of any personal guarantees so that you do know the consequences if the business fails.
Yeah.
It's just being aware, really. And if you do that, hopefully you never need to. It's a bit like an insurance policy. It's there just in case.
Yeah, exactly. And I think for me, it's just understanding that, these sorts of things in business, I think Steph used to say 3 out of 5 businesses fail.
Yeah.
That's really high, isn't it?
And I think that's within the first few years as well. Yeah. I think the stats go higher if you go, further along.
Wow.
Yeah.
And sometimes ignorance is bliss, isn't it? You start a business.
I mean, again, it's normal. That's part of the economy. Some businesses will fail, others will be created.
Yeah.
And hopefully the people who've had failed businesses will set up another one with those lessons learned.
So, I mean, in all you do and you and Steph do, I know you're in the process of just doing a lot of stuff to get more information out there so that people can almost ask questions quietly and get answers. So where would they go initially to find some of your content that could actually help them?
I think the best place, first of all, go to our website.
Yeah.
We are looking to do some, I like to call them 60-second guides. So trying to cover complex topics in a very short time frame. Things like personal guarantees, directors' loan accounts, technical things that they might not know the answer to.
Yeah.
They'll hopefully be able to find those on our website.
So for me, it's all about protecting people with purpose and that sort of stuff. What's the future look like for you and Steph?
At the moment, busy. Busy with work. Obviously, we're getting a lot of clients coming in needing our services at the moment. Yeah. But also, like as you mentioned, we want to get out there more and make more of an impact and help people avoid the consequences of insolvency. So, hopefully busy promoting that and making people more aware of what their options are.
And I think it's needed, right? I think there are a lot of people out there that be listening today, and as I said before, if you're struggling or going through some stuff, sometimes it's just worth having a conversation at the very least, or looking at some of the new content that's come your way to just help you on the journey. So thank you so much for taking your time.
Thank you, Darrell.
And really enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to hearing more about your journey together and getting out there and sharing how you can help businesses.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to the Purpose People podcast. How you can help us is to like and subscribe our YouTube channel. You can also subscribe to our podcasts on Apple, Spotify, Google, and Amazon. That helps us get our message out there to help people go after their dreams, double down on it, and be successful in life on their terms.